Start your day with a positive affirmation and intention. Since 1924, Daily Word Magazine has offered inspiration and practical teachings through daily prayer messages to help people of all faiths. Your subscription includes 2 months of daily affirmations, articles, and spiritual poetry to keep you inspired and motivated. Check out the digital subscription package that includes the online magazine with audio, smartphone app, and daily email. Get your subscription today. Visit dailyword.com or unity.org.
You're listening to Unity Online Radio, the voice of an awakening world. Welcome to World Spirituality, exploring the unity within all cultures and faith traditions, with your host, Reverend Paul John Roach.
Yes, hello and welcome to World Spirituality on the Unity Online Radio Network. I'm your host, Paul John Roach, coming to you from Fort Worth in Texas. And today we welcome the author and teacher who's written an excellent investigation of the chakra system entitled Chakra Healing Therapy, Awaken Spiritual Energies and Heal Emotional Wounds. Glen Park has taught workshops in the Alexander technique and in chakra healing therapy for over 30 years, both in Europe and the US, as well as in Australia and Japan. So it's a pleasure to welcome Glen to our show today. Glad you're with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm very pleased to be here.
And as I've said before, you're my fourth Brit this month, so this is exciting for me. I don't know how that happened. It's just a synchronicity, I guess, but it's been fun. We've had a good time, so I know we're going to have a good time today. And the first thing I want to say is that I love the way the book looks at the chakras and the Kundalini system in such a comprehensive way. So if you're listening today and are interested in this topic, the book's excellent because it covers the physical aspects, but also the psychological and the psychic as well, and then the spiritual levels. And even more than that, there's cultural considerations, developmental stages, and other ways of approach. So it's really a kaleidoscope, really, of approaches, and each one may be of interest to you, or there may be one specifically that's useful. And that's what I found, because I've read many books about the chakras and studied it myself, but I love the thoughtful approach. And of course, it's very well written. It's exceedingly clear. And I like that, because you read some texts from India, for instance, and they're deep and profound, but they're hard to get your head around. This is very approachable. So I just wanted to let everybody know that, and that you purposely did this, right, to be as comprehensive as possible.
That's right. Yes, I've been teaching this for 30 years, and actually I was taught about the chakras, first of all in the UK, but then by a wonderful clairvoyant in America, who I was lucky enough to be introduced to, and he gave me a week teaching me his system of the chakras, which outlined the psychological level that I've written about. And at the end of the week, he said, I think you should focus on working with the chakras because you're going to do something important to do with the chakras. And I think he saw this book coming 30 years later.
Wow.
So, I felt I was, it's always been at the back of my mind that I've learned such a lot, both from him and the teachings in this country, and then from working for 30 years with clients, that I just wanted this to be shared. I wanted other people to have access to this knowledge.
And, in Unity, we have what we call the 12 power system, the 12 powers of man, which were, similar to the chakras in a way, but they're based on the 12 disciples and the 12 holy qualities. But similar idea, moving through the body. One thing I did note in the book that I'd never come across before, thought was quite fascinating, was when you talk about the spine, the early embryonic spine is sort of just one big curve, right? But as the child develops, it moves in different directions. and that those points, those axial points, that's where the chakras are. And I've always associated the chakras with, different parts of the body, the heart, so the solar plexus, etc. But I love that idea that, as the spine curves, then you've got a point. It makes perfect sense to me that would be an important part of the body and the psychic body as well. So that's fascinating. I love that little bit of information.
I found that fascinating, especially when the chakras are, the Sanskrit word for chakra is a wheel, and it's seen as a rotating disc-like thing by clairvoyance, and it's as though it was rotating the spine into these changes of direction in some extraordinary way that we don't understand, but it is at these critical points in the spine. Each chakra is at a critical point.
Yes, very interesting. And also, it's how do I put it? This is not something you master, right? It's something. It's an ongoing understanding. It's like life itself, if you like. You don't become a master of the chakra system. You utilize it. It's endlessly renewable and renewing in your consciousness, right? There's always something new to learn. That's been my experience anyway over several decades. Is that it's that's what makes it so fascinating, I think. And it doesn't have to be one thing or the other, right? Some people say it's based on consciousness, right? You mentioned that in the book too. And some people say, well, not really. It's beyond that. Or it's based on a system, and other people say, no, there's no system to it. I know the Hindus love to talk in paradox and conundrum. So, but I think there's something to that. It cannot be pinned down, is I think what they're saying.
Yes. I mean, the Hindu text I quoted was that they were described as divine energies of consciousness. But I think my teacher in America, he was the one who showed that there was a psychological, a psychic, and a spiritual level to the chakras. And I added the physical level to that because of the work that I do with the body. I was learning so much and thinking how linked that was to. So as you say, it's a journey that just keeps deepening and continuing.
Now, before we jump further into it, you originally were a practitioner and student of the Alexander technique, right? And maybe just in a little bit, if you can explain what that is. But I'd like to know how the Alexander technique and the chakra systems, nest together, how they fit together in your experience. And but first we need to know what exactly, for those that don't have no idea what the Alexander technique is. What is it basically?
Well, Alexander was an Australian who wanted to be an actor, but and he was very reasonably successful as a young man. But then he started to develop this problem, which was that on stage, halfway through a play, his voice would become hoarse and he would be gasping for breath, and something was going wrong with his voice, and he would lose it. He went to every possible person he could, voice teachers, medics, and nobody was able to help him. He ended up spending 7, 8, 9 years watching himself in mirrors that showed profiles and front view and so on, and examining exactly what he did when he was speaking and the difference between normal speaking and speaking on a stage. And slowly, through this very intuitive self-exploration, he developed these very important principles of movement that have since been verified scientifically. And so Alexander teachers teach these principles of movement. We often work with people who've got back pain or neck pain or shoulder pain, helping them to move in ways that enable them to have a happy body rather than a painful body. We work with people who play musical instruments and get tense and need special ways of thinking about their movements with the instruments. And we've worked with the Olympic runners and rowers and so on. So there's a whole spectrum of anybody who wants to know how to use their body in a good way. But the important thing about the work that we do is that when Alexander learned all these principles, he started to teach them to other people. And he got very frustrated because he would tell someone to free the neck and allow the head to go forwards and up. That's one of his instructions. And he would find that they didn't know how to do as he was telling them. So in frustration, he went up and put his hands on the head and neck and discovered that with his hands, he could make the right thing happen, and he could give the person a really powerful experience of how to get the musculature into balance and the body into balance. So as Alexander teaches, we're trained not only to teach these principles, but to work almost like healers with very, very gentle work with our hands, encouraging the musculature to come into balance, to allow these principles of movement to work well. Now, for me, that was lovely. I loved doing this work. But what I found was when I started practicing after it's a 3-year training, it's very intense. I found after my training that some of the people who were coming with me to study, as I was working very gently with my hands, they would have a very powerful emotional release of some sort. They might cry, or they might have some memory surface. For example, somebody with the very tight shoulder might remember lifting the shoulder to stop being hit as a child, hit on the head, or something like that could happen. So I found that the releasing of the muscles was releasing muscle memory. It was releasing emotional memory. And I felt I needed to start working at a more psychological level as well as at the physical level with the body. And because I had already studied the chakras, because I'd been advised to by a psychic who told me I was too open psychically and needed to learn to manage my energy system, and I thought I'm going to bring the chakras into my work. So that's how I began to work with the chakras and the Alexander technique, only if it was necessary. If I found somebody was operating in this very emotional response to my work, I'd say it might help if I start working with the chakras. So people would come just for the Alexander technique, they'd come for both, or they'd come for just the chakras eventually.
And really, it's all about balance, isn't it? And allowing, the greater energies that are within us to come forth, right? We hamper ourselves sometimes.
Yes, I mean, Alexander used to say, allow the right thing to do itself. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Let the right thing do itself. Don't be tensing up to make the right thing happen. I could give an example if you like, but I could talk about a young man came to me who was learning flamenco dancing because he loved the kind of power and confidence that these flamenco teachers exuded. But he was practicing every night and getting backache and losing sleep. And that was because in order to give this strong, powerful chest look that flamenco teachers have, he was tightening in his lower back and he was disconnecting his lower chakras from the ground. He was disconnecting the energy system. So at some point we shifted into working at an energy level, and particularly working with the solar plexus chakra, which is where we build our confidence and our self-esteem. And he realized that the attraction of the flamenco dancing for him was that he wanted to build self-esteem. He wanted to come across in that confidence, exuberant way. And by working at the psychological level with the chakras, as well as the physical level with the Alexander technique, he made massive improvements in his dancing.
That's awesome. And, so often we want it so badly, don't we? Our intellects or our egos or whatever want it, that we force things to happen. And then, like you say, there's an imbalance. It's really hard to relax, though.
Yeah, we get in the way of ourselves, don't we?
Right. I've just been watching the European Cup soccer, because I'm British and like those things. And it's just amazing to watch in any sport, really. You can watch the basketball or whatever. Just the amazing relaxation of so many of the players, even in most tense situations, because they're in that sweet spot, right? They're relaxing. They perform better because they are relaxing and they're in balance and harmony. And of course, sports psychology has come, miles since 40 years ago in understanding the link between the emotion, the psychology and the body. And that's why I'm excited about this book, because you combine all those things in it, and it's amazing what we can achieve, I think, if we can, like you said, get yourself out of the way.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, very good. So
thank you.
Let's talk about some basics of the system. I mean, I know a lot of us in New Thought and alternative spiritualities have come across the chakra system and know a little bit about it. But there may be some folks out there who know nothing. It's a system originating in the East, right? In India and Tibet and other places there, based around, as you said, these wheels of energy that are throughout the body, but also based on the flow of energy up the spine, what we might call the Kundalini, right?
Yes,
so, yeah,
yes, and linked to yoga.
Take it from there.
I mean, a lot of yoga as practiced today is just very physical, but actually the chakras were part of the yoga system, and that was seen as yoking the spiritual self to the earthly body. That's what yoga means in Sanskrit, this yoking of the spiritual and the earthly. And that's what's so wonderful about the chakras, that they're not sort of saying that you go beyond the body, you neglect the body to be spiritual. It's you embrace the body and you make the body divine, as is the spiritual world. So the chakras are wonderful at allowing us to embrace our whole self and allow it to be spiritualized. And in terms of the energy flows, we have two major energy flows, one from the earth and one from the universe. So the earth energy is coming from the center of the earth up through our feet, into our legs, into our base chakra at the base of the spine, traveling up the spine and up the body to the crown chakra at the top of the spine. And the downward flow is the spiritual energy that's coming from the universe down through the crown chakra, down through the eye, the throat, the heart, the solar plexus, the sacral, the base chakra, down through the legs and down into the earth. So we're connecting heaven and earth with our bodies. That's the wonderful thing. The base chakra is energized at birth. That's the first chakra to become dominant and active, and is dominant through the first year or two of life. And it's connected to the reptilian brain. It's our instinctual energy that's just focused on keeping us alive. And I call that our inner animal. And shall I go quickly through them in that way?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And then the next chakra, the sacral chakra, which is centered in the sacrum, that's dominant during childhood. And now the focus isn't purely on staying alive. It's more focused on relationship to this outside world. This is the beginning of a separate self arriving with the sacral chakra. The Sanskrit meaning of this chakra, Svadhisthana, is home of the self. It's the beginning of building personality, and it's where the young child is wanting to have fun, to explore, to be curious, to be happy. And the most important part of that relating to the world is the mother and father and the siblings and the family. So they want to belong, they want to feel loved, they want to feel that they are a member and that they are happy. And so those are the sort of motivations for the sacral chakra, which I call our inner child, which we have to continue to take care of throughout our adult lives. And then in puberty and teenage years and young adulthood, the dominant chakra becomes the solar plexus chakra. That is much more linked to the prefrontal cortex of the neocortex of the brain. So that's the most recently evolved part of our brain, which is to do with complex thinking. The child chakra is linked to the limbic system, which is very emotional. And then with young adulthood, we're beginning to think in more complex ways. And there's big changes that happen during teenage years to the prefrontal lobes. It's quite interesting that's going through, and they become more efficient. So we think more efficiently during those years. Although, of course, there's always this linking back to the child chakra. So teenagers tend to move between the child and the adult, if you see what I mean. But this is where the young person is thinking about what they want to become. And there's a more sort of complex, it becomes delayed gratification. I think I'll pass these exams, or I think I'll learn these skills, as opposed to the instant gratification of the child. So that's the young adult of the solar plexus chakra. And then moving up to the heart chakra, really those first three chakras, the lower chakras, are where we develop the separate self, the ego, as we call it. But the heart chakra is where the boundaries begin to loosen again. The heart chakra is where we experience very deep emotions, where we feel really moved by nature or moved by beauty, or full of unconditional love and joy at the universe, appreciation, gratitude. These are all heart emotions. And when we have these kind of emotions, the electromagnetic field that we all have around our bodies, and which is a much greater field around the heart than it is around the head, that electromagnetic field expands and widens and grows as we have those kind of heart-based feelings of love and appreciation. And what happens when the heart chakra begins to flow more strongly is that it's our inner healer and it's our inner witness. And through witnessing the lower chakras, where we can have some of our greatest wounding in our childhood and our adolescence, we're able to heal ourselves through this loving witnessing of ourselves by ourselves, which is what the heart chakra can do for us. So it can look lovingly down on the lower chakras, but it also opens us up to the creativity and inspiration of the upper chakras. Now, as the heart expands, the whole energy system expands. And so that flow downwards from the crown chakra, the spiritual energy, becomes much more powerful. And the upper chakras can flow much more strongly. So at a psychological level, the upper chakras are like a higher expression of the lower chakras. So the heart chakra is like a new world that we enter into, the spiritual world, a higher expression of the base chakra, where we enter the earth realm, the world of the earth. And then the throat chakra is a higher expression of the sacral chakra, the creative child, the spontaneous creativity of the child becomes the creative expression of the adult. And the eye chakra, the higher expression of the solar plexus chakra. In the solar plexus chakra, we're thinking about what we want to be. It's very self-oriented thinking. The eye chakra is where we get into our conceptual thinking, our philosophical thinking, our creative visionary thinking, our intuitive thinking, but at a higher level. However, if we also have an expanded flowing heart chakra, these upper chakras get inspirational thinking coming down from the crown chakra. So we get this inspired eye chakra. And the throat chakra, the Sanskrit word for it is purification. It's where we lose the false self that we've adapted, where we've adapted to the world to fit into it, and we become our true self, and we find our true vocation, and we function at a more spiritual level. And also, as this increases, this actually is where the developmental psychologist Maslow talked about peak experiences, the thing about them being in their sweet spot, these footballers. That's a real potential with the throat chakra, which would be the chakra very dominant in sports people, dancers, musicians, artists, where we're creating art, where we're conceptualizing art. It's the eye chakra. And then the final chakra is it's entering a new realm. We've experienced the spiritual through the heart chakra, but with the crown chakra, we experience the divine. We become unified with the universe and with God and with everything that all the words we use for divine. And that's a whole other realm where we can experience enlightened, awakened consciousness.
Beautiful. Yeah. And so many resonances with other systems, like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as you mentioned, and self-actualization, or I see resonances with the tree of life in
the Kabbalah system,
in the Kabbalist or Judaic system, etc. So, fascinating stuff. Folks, I'm with Glen Park, and we're talking about her lovely book. It's called Chakra Healing Therapy, Awaken Spiritual Energies and Heal Emotional Wounds. We're about to take a break and listen to these messages from Unity, but we'll be right back to talk about more aspects of this wonderful system. And thank you for listening and keeping this show on the road, and the rest of the shows on the network. Be back in a few minutes.
Discover the power within. Unity Online Radio. The voice of an awakening world.
We now return to World Spirituality with Reverend Paul John Roach.
All right, welcome back to today's show. I'm with Glen Park. We're talking about her book, Chakra Healing Therapy, Awaken Spiritual Energies and Heal Emotional Wounds. This really is a workbook. It is something you can have with you for a long, long time, because it's not something you just read and say, oh, well, that's nice. It's something you refer to understand different areas of your body and your being, and how you can live more effective, balanced lives, in fact, to empower you. And at the end of the first segment, we talked about many of the correlations there are between the chakras and other systems like the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Even Unity's 12 Powers of Man, of course, is based around this system. And in India, you mentioned the spiritual coming down from above and the earthly coming from below, and the sacred banyan tree in the iconography of India, the tree has its roots in spirit, and then its branches down in the earth, and I love the Jacob's dream, where he dreamt of the ladder, and the ladder went up into heaven, right? The angels were both arising and descending, which is exactly what we're talking about, isn't it? As above, so below, as within, so without, the connectedness there. And I love that. They all support each other. And where I'm going with this is, when I was first on the spiritual path, everybody was saying, well, you that's lower chakra thinking. You want to move beyond those base chakras into the higher levels. And I never felt that was quite right, because it seems like all aspects are good, right? But I love what you're saying about how the upper chakras sort of higher expressions of the lower deepen the lower ones as we mature. And rather than just wipe them out and say, well, I've transcended that. No, I see them in a deeper context. So they all support each other, right? Each one is integral. They're all important.
That's right, they are. And it's really important that we do integrate, especially the inner animal. I think a lot of us are very disconnected from the earth, very disconnected from our own animal nature. And it's, you know, it's been, if you think about the base chakra at the pelvic floor, the words that we just use there are often swear words and words to curse and so on. We've got a sense of we don't want anything to do with being animals, but we need to embrace our animal and feel connected to our animals and to nature. We're part of it. We're not this separate thing. We're part of nature. We're part of the planet. And the same with the child. There's a thing in the Bible where it says that when I was a child, I played with childish things, but now I'm a man, I put childish things away. But we don't need to put the child away completely. We might transcend, become more mature, but we integrate that child. We continue to have fun. We continue to play and enjoy our lives. So I think connecting the inner chakras to the whole system, the lower chakras to the whole system is really important.
And then we can use the Kundalini energies too, right? Some people think, oh gosh, it's getting a little woo-woo now, all these energies, the serpent, the coiled serpent that's coming up my spine sounds a little bit, ooh, I don't know. But it's not, right? It's simply energies moving.
Yes, and the Kundalini experience can be very different for different people. And I think, a lot of the work that I do is about getting our pranic energy into balance, which is a not such a subtle energy as the Kundalini energy. But the Alexander technique very much does this. It brings balance into the whole body. And I think when the whole body's balanced like that, the Kundalini experience can be very beautiful. It can be a sense of light. I've had this experience once or twice where I've been in a meditation and felt golden light just pouring through my body in a really beautiful way. So I don't think we should be frightened of Kundalini. I think the more we get our whole body into balance, the less distressing any sort of Kundalini situation will be.
Right, and the thing is not to force it, right? It's to, if it happens, it happens. And I know some people just want to have a Kundalini experience or whatever. I was involved with a group of Swami Muktanandas one time, and he was an Indian guru, and they were always searching for kriyas, as they called them, which were the Kundalini moving up through the spine. And they'd be twitching and doing different things, and that would be cool, because that would show that they were advanced. They were getting all the energies moving, whatever. I'm not knocking that system, but sometimes the practitioners get carried away. And I'm not saying the kriyas don't work and aren't real, but sometimes again we can force it. It's not about forcing anything, right? Because then we're playing games with this stuff, and this stuff is really a beautiful thing. We don't need to be playing games with it.
Well, also in my work as a body worker, people have these experiences of I wouldn't call them kriyas, but they might be. They have these experiences of sensations rising up through the body, and it's actually pranic energy. It's the body coming into balance. So the main thing I think is to stay with the principles. I believe that the way to become enlightened is to work with that heart chakra energy, opening the whole system up. And whether we're then fortunate enough for that to move to the crown chakra is an act of God or not, and it doesn't really matter, because the heart chakra will give us a happy life, will give us a life in which we feel we are serving spirit, whether we achieve awakening, enlightened experiences or not.
Right. Well, let's talk about the heart chakra, because I know, most of us are yearning to open our hearts more deeply. And the heart chakra stands in the middle, doesn't it, between the lower three and the higher three. And it's sort of a pivotal place. And if we walk through it a little bit, maybe we can look at the various stages, that we talked about, the psychological level, the psychic and spiritual. I love the name of the heart chakra in Sanskrit. It's anahata, right, which means unstruck or unwounded, depending on the translation. And that's always fascinated me, because when you're truly centered in love, you move beyond any idea of being vulnerable or hurt by anything. You are invulnerable in the sense, right? Because love, it cannot be wounded. And I like unstruck, because not just struck with some object, but unstruck like a bell that's unstruck. It vibrates in and of itself, right? Without the need for outside things. It's fulfilled unto itself, and I think that's, for me, some aspect of the heart chakra.
So the heart chakra is, yes, it's lovely, isn't it? It's unwounded. It moves beyond woundedness. So we look back at our childhood wounds, and we can see the gold in the wound. We can find that although that was a terribly painful time, and maybe we still feel sad. I mean, I lost my father when I was 7. I still feel sad about that. But I've also learned from that. I've learned to have a relationship with death that at a very young age that has helped me through my life. So there are gifts in the wound, and we can begin to see our wounds in a less one-sided way. And wounds also develop compassion. If we've experienced wounding as a child, we can be very compassionate when we see other people experiencing wounding. So we learn from our wounds as well as from our gifts. And the heart chakra is when we become conscious of these things. In the Buddhist tradition, there are 4 aspects of the heart chakra, and I think it's a really useful way of looking at the heart chakra. They talk about compassion, which I've just sort of mentioned in terms of looking at our woundedness. But it has to we also have to have sympathetic joy, where we share in the compassion is where we feel the sadness of other people and other parts of life. And sympathetic joy is where we share the joy of others. When somebody's had a very good experience, we share it. We don't feel jealous. We enjoy other people's happiness. And then the other quality is loving kindness. We treat the planet, we treat life, we treat the world with loving kindness, and we treat ourselves and we treat each other with loving kindness. That's our default position in our actions. And then the other one is equanimity, and that's accepting. Rumi put it so well: accepting whatever comes to the door. Welcome whatever guest arrives at the door. So the guest, I had an extraordinary thing this morning. I went for a walk, as I do every day. There's a very small nature reserve near me, and it's absolutely a gift. And I go out there, and there were some beautiful wildflowers that had just appeared, and my heart just expanded. I was so happy and loving these wildflowers. And then I saw my neighbor, and he looked very sad, and his cat had just been run over. And I know this cat. I've stroked this cat many times, and I was so sad. And I after he left, I cried. And I thought, this is how life is. There are these great gifts and these wounds, and we need to learn a kind of equanimity around that. This is the nature of life. We're emotional beings, but it's all part of this richness of life that these things happen.
Right. I think that's important. It's equanimity is not indifference. I think some people feel like they got to be detached from everything. Equanimity is feeling what you feel, but staying centered within that. And thank you, though, for bringing out the fact that it is in our woundedness that we often, go deeper with our compassion, because that is so important. You lost your dad at 7. I lost my sister at 7, and
Right.
worked through many of I'm sure some of the same, stages of grief that one works with when you lose somebody in the family like that. So yes, we're wounded healers in that sense, but the essence, when we've reached that stage, the unwoundedness is this idea that I've come through, right, and now I have reached a level that is victorious, if you like, in a very gentle, humble way, a bit like Jesus Christ, reached that level of compassion, that nothing could get to him anymore, in the sense that that's what we're called to do. I love all this talk about the heart chakra and the nature of it, and psychologically, of course, it's to do with healing, isn't it? Charles Stovall said it was the great binder, the healer of the binder, knitter up of wounds, right?
Yes, that's right. And just healing through that compassion and through that love and that equanimity. The equanimity and the compassion need to balance each other, don't they? They fit with my solar and lunar channels that I write about in the book. The
right.
Traditionally,
no, that's something we need to mention. Because, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, the solar channel is traditionally masculine, because it's the independent, aspirational, autonomous self, and the lunar channel is the relational, empathic, connected self. And it's so important that these two sides of ourselves are balanced in the central channel of the chakras, which is Sushumna, but that we have a channel running up the right side of our bodies, which is that individual, and that would be where we could develop equanimity. But then the lunar channel running up the left would be where we develop our compassion, and they need to be balanced with each other. And with the throat chakra, for example, we need to be able to speak our truth. We need to be able to express ourselves. We also need to be able to listen. We need to be a good listener and a good speaker. So there's the solar aspect of the throat chakra and the lunar aspect of the throat chakra.
And it links in with the right and left parts of the brain,
the eye chakra. Right? This is where all this research in the left and right brains it is so important, because we now know that these two brains need to be in balance with each other. The left brain rules the right side of the body, and the right brain rules the left side. So the left brain is linked to the solar channel, where we have logical, concise, scientific thinking, and we can be very competitive in our thinking and aspirational. The right brain is where we are empathic, relational. We bring into account all the other things that are going on. We're not quite so finely tuned into one little area of expertise, which is more solar channel. So the left and right brains fit into this solar lunar, traditionally masculine feminine thing too.
And we see it in Taoism as well, with yin and yang.
Yes, definitely.
We see it again in the tree of life, right? Which has masculine and feminine aspects. Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, so, the chakras, there's that masculine, feminine at that horizontal level, working its way through the chakras. I mean, right down in the child chakra, you can have the solar rebellious child, as transaction analysis calls it, and the lunar. These are exaggerated expressions. The lunar over-adapted child, too good, and too naughty. You get the solar lunar expressions there. But also with the Kundalini, you have the god Shiva is the formless energy, and the god Shakti, who descends to the base chakra, Shakti Kundalini. She's the feminine goddess of manifesting. So there's a masculine feminine connection there, and the myth, the story, the Hindu tradition says that Shakti longs to reunite with Shiva, so that's the drive of Kundalini to travel up the spine and connect with Shiva in the crown chakra and have this non-dual experience where the manifest universe becomes one with the formless universe.
And we see these images too in esoteric Hinduism and in Tibetan Buddhism, Tantric Buddhism, where you have these interlocking forces of the male and female, often in a sexual pose, right? And some people think, oh my goodness, this is encouraging, weird sex or something. But really, it's not. It's representing the integration, right, of these great forces. And
within each of us.
Right, in each of us. And so a lot of people misunderstand that, and see it as something less than, instead of something wonderful and life enhancing. In another Hindu system, you got the Purusha and the Prakriti, which is similar to Shiva Shakti. The undifferentiated essence of Shiva, and then the energy form, the sort of material universe, if you like. But they rest in each other again, don't they? Like the Native American, Father Sky and Mother Earth, right? They are part and parcel.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so wonderful that these systems are everywhere. You think, gosh, it must be true, because all these different spiritual systems are experiencing such a similar thing, aren't they?
That's what I love about. I've just written a book about it. Actually, it's called Unity in World Religions, coming out in the fall. And
wonderful!
I note the commonalities between various religions. So this is right up my street. Yeah, I love this stuff.
In line with the perennial philosophy.
Exactly. I talk about the perennial philosophy a lot in it. Yeah, and what I call the golden thread. That threads its way through.
Oh, I'll have to look for that.
Religions. Yeah. So looking at the psychic level of the heart chakra, we're talking about in your chart here in the book. It's talking about healing the loss of boundaries, but it's creating healthy boundaries, right? Just because we're loving doesn't mean we're going to be trampled on. I think tough love is a different thing to squishy love, right?
Yes, I think, the way I think about this with the heart chakra, I do feel that with the heart chakra, our boundaries do melt, and you get situations where people who've been married for many, many years start to look rather like each other if they've had a happy relationship, or people start to look like their dogs or their cats. There's this extraordinary sense of people growing together with a lot, if there's a lot of love between them. And so I think, my feeling is that we need, as well as the heart chakra, we do need the clarity of the eye chakra, so we can look clearly at things, and we do need the sensible thinking, the practical thinking of the solar plexus chakra, which I see as servant of spirit. At the spiritual level, the solar plexus chakra is the part of us that organizes our lives so that we operate at our spiritual best. So it's the practical organizer. And there are times when things can happen that can make you very angry. You see somebody hitting a child. There's good reason to feel very angry about that. It's important to direct the anger at the behavior rather than at the actual total ultimate individual, if you see what I mean. But there are times, as with Jesus in the temple, where, Jesus was turning over the tables of the bankers, basically. We call them the money changers, but they were the bankers at the temple. And we sometimes think it would be a good idea if we turned over the tables of the bankers. Sometimes being angry about a spiritual injustice is valid, and the heart chakra will accept that. But I think the thinking comes from the eye chakra and the third chakra.
Yes, and I love the fact that they mutually support each other, right?
Yes.
This is where it gets endlessly fascinating, I think. I think, for instance, the solar plexus chakra in unity, we would see that as the place of order. A lot of what goes on in the body, the autonomic nervous system is based around the solar plexus, isn't it? And it's also the place where we do take care of business, if you like. And I love what it's called in Sanskrit. It's Manipura, which means the city of jewels. That's wonderful, isn't it? What a great name for that place of order. It's sparkling. It's a sparkling place of possibility.
Yes, and especially when you think that it's dominant in teenage years, you see these young people, and they are a sparkling jewel, aren't they? And we're many gifted. It's a city of jewels. We have many gifts, and if we're not destroying ourselves through our woundedness, all those gifts will sparkle, and we need to be able to use our gifts. Yes.
The sad thing is, when we're young, is that we don't realize the jewels that we are. We're always wanting something else, or we feel unsatisfied or whatever. If we could just see ourselves from an older person's perspective, we'd realize how magnificent we were. It took me a long time to stop, rehearsing my life and eventually saying, hey, wait a minute, this is the real thing. I don't need to be rehearsing anymore. Waiting for it all to fall into place.
I think in our education system, we need to be teaching self-esteem. It should be central to teaching young people so that they don't beat themselves up too much and live in the rehearsal rather than in the real thing.
Yes. Yeah, and we're getting close to the end of the show. I can't believe we've already gone through an hour. We obviously need many more hours here with Glen to discuss this fascinating book. Let me tell you about next week's show, and that'll leave us a minute or so to add some concluding remarks from Glen about things we haven't touched today that she thinks are important. Next week, Emily Threet joins me, and she's going to discuss how to love and live our way through grief, and how to reclaim and activate joy and caring in the face of loss. And it's the first of a couple of shows that I'm doing on grief this coming month. So join us then. But now, just for the last couple of weeks, what haven't we covered today you think is important for our listeners to know about?
Well, one area of the book that I haven't talked about is the cultural side of it. And so, you could, one of the things about the sacral chakra is where we belong to the family, and then we belong to the school we go to, and then we belong to the country we live in, and so on. And so tribal consciousness is linked to sacral chakra. Football matches are great ways to enjoy your tribal consciousness. And we've got to be careful that tribal consciousness doesn't become a dangerous, violent tribal consciousness. But if we were conscious about it and could work with the positive sides of these, what I perhaps should finish with is how each of the chakras could help us deal with problems of climate change. So if we own our inner animal, if more people recognize that we're animals on this planet, I think we will take better care of the earth.
We'll have to have you back, Glen. We're sorry we're at the end of our show. Thank you so much, and thanks for listening, folks.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. This is Unity Online Radio, the voice of an awakening world.
Start your day with a positive affirmation and intention. Since 1924, Daily Word Magazine has offered inspiration and practical teachings through daily prayer messages to help people of all faiths. Your subscription includes 2 months of daily affirmations, articles, and spiritual poetry to keep you inspired and motivated. Check out the digital subscription package that includes the online magazine with audio, smartphone app, and daily email. Get your subscription today. Visit dailyword.com or unity.org.